I'd like to focus our attention in Luke chapter 24, beginning in verse number 44. Jesus said, "Now he said to them, These are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things which are written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures. And he said to them, "Thus it is written that the Christ would suffer and rise again from the dead the third day." I want you to notice in particular verse number 44, that all things which were written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. What we find here is how the Jews often categorize their writings with the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. We also learn that the Old Testament writings were pointing everyone to the coming Messiah. We're pointing people to Jesus. When God gave Abraham those promises, there were more than 3 promises in Genesis chapter 12. But those promises, the land promise, the nation promise, and the blessing promise, that third promise was really that helps us to understand the promise of the coming Messiah and salvation in Jesus Christ. So while that land and nation promise were fulfilled by the end of the Old Testament, the New Testament is all about that blessing promise, which would come through Jesus as the Messiah. So one thing that we can take away from our reading this week is that when we think about the Old Testament writings, they do give us the history of the Israelites, the history of how things began, but they also are pointing to someone great, someone far greater than anyone else. They're pointing us to the Messiah, and certainly for the Jews, in Galatians in particular, like in Galatians chapter 3, we see how the law was like a schoolmaster or was a tutor. It was leading them to someone. It was leading them to the Messiah. So something for us to hold on to in Luke chapter 24, verse number 44. Talk to you later.